Okay. I hope you learned something in the prior video where we were talking about lens perspective and image compression. Check out the 6 links below for abundantly valid examples, really good examples of image compression and lens perspective or foreshortening. So now we know why, for example, a 50 millimeter doesn't render the same as, say, a 75 millimeter lens. It's like, well, you know, it's cropped, and therefore the equivalent crop is, 75 millimeters, let's say 80, portraiture lens. So why the hell does this woman's face look totally different since we have the same effective focal length on the DX crop using the 50 millimeter lens as we do, say, an 80 millimeter on the full frame? And the reason for that is lens compression, image compression, lens perspective, the actual foreshortening. And as I told you, the easiest way to understand this, people look at diagrams, they get really confused. Just put your hands like this. You're talking about axial compression versus peripheral bloom. In this case, when we're talking about portraiture, we obviously know we have depth of field vis-a-vis our aperture, and we've got the background out of focus. So what about the person's face? Well, person's face is three-dimensional. Closest point, furthest point. You can take someone with a horse face, and instead of shooting them at, say, 35, 40 millimeters or 50 millimeters, what I've done is I can shoot them at 85 millimeters or 100 millimeters. I've actually flattened out their face. You make a kind of a fugly person look really good, or at least a whole lot better. It depends. The examples in the links below will give you a really good, examples of that. A couple of them are really, really good examples. So this is when you can actually look at a person's face and go, yeah, we need to use the 100 millimeter on her because everybody wants to be flattered. As I mentioned before, peripheral bloom versus axial magnification. What is the axis? The center part, like the center part of a wheel. It's like if you're in a tilt-a-whirl, the further out you go, the more things spin. Well, in this case, when it comes to lens perspective, the further out you go, more the background, the periphery. You're going to be focusing on your subject. Out here, we've got all the background. The person right here, we got the background out here. What happens if I take a shot of this person at 50 millimeters? Okay, well, that's fine. What happens if I take a shot of that person at, say, 300 millimeters? We have the exact same magnification. The person on the back of that image sensor, if I back up, it's like, well, I'm going to shoot the person here at 50, or I can back way the hell up and shoot the person at 200 millimeters. Well, that's fine. I've still got the same magnification of the person on the composition of the recorded image, but the actual lens distortion, the actual perspective, the image compression, the foreshortening, the lens perspective has changed. The foreground, the subject, and the background has done this to this, this to this. The magnification has remained exactly the same magnification, okay? The size of her nose on an 8x10 print with the 50 millimeters is the exact same size as the person's nose with the 200 millimeter. But what has happened? I flattened the person's face and their depth out, and I've actually bloomed out the periphery, because that's the way the lens works. Every lens, doesn't matter how good the quality is, mirror lenses do something different. We'll discuss that for another video. So we actually have image compression. And the easiest way to understand that is subject, mid-range, background. Go from this to this. That is why when you see those really awesome landscape shots that are cropped or whatever, and the moon is just like gigantic, it's like someone photoshopped that. No, what they did is, this is the normal moon at 50 millimeters, for example. This is a person's house or something, and over here is the background and the trees. You've gone from this to this, okay? The moon has come way the hell up. But this, the axial difference between this at 50 and the axial difference at this at 200 millimeters isn't that much. It's the same thing on the axis of a wheel. The axis of a wheel doesn't move much. You move out to the periphery, things move a lot. Well, with a lens, what happens is that not much has changed here at the center, the subject, the foreground, but a whole hell of a lot has changed in the background. Okay, I hope I made that really clear. So let's talk about the various types of depth now. We've got 3 different types of depth. We have image compression, bokeh, which is all optical, and we have perspective, either isolation or compression. Then we have perceptual depth, which is electrical and optical. We got the micro contrast, or the intertonal transmission of a really good lens. that actually translates to the actual depth of the image. People think, well, it's a two-dimensional image, you know, where you talk about depth. You know, anytime that someone talks about two-dimensional depth on a piece of paper, you know, tell them to kiss your butt and go look up what the hell a hologram is. Because a hologram is a two-dimensional image. Oh, but look, you know, when you hold a hologram, it looks so deep. It's all optics, baby. Optics. I know it's a two-dimensional image. Two-dimensional image on your screen is two-dimensional image when you print it out. There's still things there called rendered depth. That rendered depth is achieved of three different qualities: image compression, the bokeh, which are all optical, the perspective, which is either isolation or compression, and then we have the perceptual depth, as I said, the micro contrast, and then we have rendered depth, which is the lens design, which is all optical. You know, the binocular disparity, the same thing that actually defines why a hologram looks. Most people have never seen a true art hologram. They know a hologram on their credit card. It's like, oh, you know, this looks like it's got depth to it. But if someone saw a true art hologram, I mean, those are really, really deep. The same thing on that ferrocell. Most people have never even seen a ferrocell. Almost nobody's seen a ferrocell. I mean, you got like 4 inches of depth on that thing, and that is not only two-dimensional, it is less than 1 micron thin. That device, invented by my buddy Tim, is incredible. You're looking at 4 inches of depth on something that is flat as hell. Just damn flat. 1 micron thin and flat as hell. But when you look at a ferrocell, it's like, holy crap, it's like the thing is jumping out, literally. The device is absolutely amazing, and almost nobody on Earth has seen it. I mean, a few people have bought one, and no, I'm not selling the ferrocell. I just mentioned that in reference to that. So anyway, when it comes to rendering the composition, you know, a true photographer is an illusionist. And you can take a person with a horse face, and you can make them look good. Check the links below. Plenty of really good examples on that. It's like, oh damn, she looks like crap at 35 millimeters, but she looks awesome at 80 millimeters. This is also why I said, you know, a 50 millimeter lens on a DX, this is one disadvantage of DX sensors. 50 millimeter lens on a DX lens, even though the angle of interception is basically 80 millimeters, basically. The image compression, the lens perspective, is still a 50 millimeter. It doesn't matter what the focal is, when you slap it on a DX, it's only crop. It's crop, 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 crop. It doesn't change the lens perspective, because every lens craps out the exact same light no matter what sensor size is underneath it. Anybody that says otherwise, tell them to kiss your butt, because they don't know anything. It's an undeniable hardcore. There's no lens on Earth that knows what the hell sensor is sitting underneath it. No lens ever, period, by anybody. Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, nobody. Every lens craps out the same light. Exact same. Crop, angle of interception. So that's why, for example, you know, if you got a person with a horse face, it's like, well, you know, I know to flatten the perspective, I need to use an 80 millimeter, and this is roughly an 80 millimeter. No, it's only cropped. That is, you need the image foreshortening of the 85 millimeter, and then you're going to have to back up. Okay? Well, you want the exact same magnification, and you don't want to pop on an 85 millimeter and crop it out, and you know, instead of doing this number, you're doing this number. It's like, well, you're going to have to back up. So you can still use the 85 millimeter on the crop sensor camera, but you're going to have to do this. Okay? Same magnification of the 85 millimeter on the full frame, but if you're going to slap that on the DX, you're going to have to back up. Beep, 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 beep. That's the noise I make when I walk backwards, right? Beep, beep, beep. Why nobody talks about this, I have no idea. I mean, once in a while someone will bring it up. But please check the image samples below and, you know, understand what's going on, because this is a super important tip. Everybody thinks, well, everything's about bokeh. Well, that's fine. Well, what about the light? Okay, we know about lighting, we know about exposure, or at least you hope you do. And we know about composition. Well, how much do you know about composition? Because a photographer is an illusionist, a magician. You know, illusionists work with light and mirrors. They work with perspective control. They work with your visual perspective of what you think you're seeing, but you ain't seeing. What's really going on is not what you think you're seeing. That's how an illusionist works. They're not truly a magician. Obviously, they're an illusionist. A photographer is an illusionist. Some horse-faced woman steps in the studio, is like, whip out the 100 millimeter lens. So you can take her face, in this case, her face, This is the background of her face, and this is the foreground of her face. You're doing this to her face. Ugly, beautiful. Ugly, beautiful. Okay? Please keep this tip in mind because people have serious issues understanding image compression when it comes to using, a 50 millimeter versus 100 versus a 200 versus a 300. Because what happens is the axis, the centermost portion, doesn't really change. Unless, of course, it's portraiture. Then it changes a lot because then this is the axis and this is the periphery. When it comes to portraiture, then this is the landscape. This is the background. And here is the subject matter. You're combining all of that and you're using a lens compression to change the person's face and render them in a flattering manner. Obviously so. But this is how you can actually take the moon, the 50 millimeter, person standing here and the moon's over here, 50 millimeter. Now we've done this with a 200 millimeter. You've really taken the moon up. The moon goes from this in the shot to this in the shot. But to maintain that exact same magnification, you're obviously going to have to back up. But backing up, same magnification, this has changed. Okay? This is what the angle, this is what the lens is doing as far as the perspective of the composition. The P of the C, the perspective of the composition, has changed. You want to keep the person the same, 50 millimeters, I'm going to put on a 200 millimeters. I want to keep the same magnification of the person, I'm going to have to back up. But I've gone from this to this. I hope that made it really simple. It should make it really simple because it's certainly a whole hell of a lot more simple than anything else you find online. Snap. Catch you later. Like this video and drop me a buck or two. Go tell me to jump off a cliff. Go tell me to go do something to myself. Whatever. I want to make things simple and easy. Okay? Bye.